Hey everyone, welcome back to the Vectra AI podcast. I'm Tiff, Product Marketing Manager at Vectra AI, and today I'm joined by John Mancini, Principal Product Manager at Vectra AI. And today we're going to talk about closing Microsoft threat detection, investigation, and response gaps with Vectra AI. So let's start with the first question, actually. John, let's talk about what is the Microsoft Threat Service problem?
Yeah. So I think the problem with the Microsoft threat surface, or you can call this the broader industry at large, is that attacks can move basically end to end very quickly, touch multiple domains, and attackers are able to do that without ultimately being detected. And a lot of this is because of tools that are ineffective at finding them. But even, just let's talk about what the attackers are doing in the first place that sets it up. This is an example of an attack where prevention failed. It's an attack driven by a ransomware group that basically started off like attacks started years ago, exploited an internet-facing server on the network. Attacker landed into the environment, bypassed EDR, bypassed kind of traditional network defenses, gain access to credentials, started using those credentials on Windows machines. They have a Windows credential. The Windows credential moves them laterally to other Windows machines, deploying ransomware payloads as they go, getting a cloud credential because AD, Azure AD sync together, using Entra ID, moves then into the cloud. Now we're moving away from that attack path that happened years ago to something much more modern. They're using those cloud credentials to access SaaS apps, add persistence, emails, SharePoint, all the data there, touching it, exploring, learning, moving then to cloud, Azure Cloud, which is right now where a lot of activity we're seeing moving, where the attacker is then able to effectively replicate what they were doing on-prem in terms of ransomware tactics, but doing it instead of using payloads malware, using it all through API calls in the control plane, using that identity to basically issue the commands that effectively do the ransomware activity, but do it in a few commands that they can issue in minutes to do the damage. And so you see all the Microsoft icons here. It's a Microsoft threat service problem because that's what we're all using today. And attackers know it, they can see it, they know what the technology is, they can spin it up in their own labs. They have the means with which to get through these now effectively to their objectives and cause damage.
Yeah. And they can move seamlessly too, right? Pivoting from one service to another. And they're targeting critical resources and data wherever they are.
Wherever it is.
Yeah.
And I'll jump in and say, this was a long sequence here. A lot of prevention failed here. But the point of this also is attacker could have injected itself in the middle of this, worked
Yes.
its way from the cloud back to the on-prem piece. They could have stayed in the middle in the SaaS land. All this is the surface. So it's kind of you can go forward, you can go backward, but ultimately the attacker is a lot of ways through here.
Yeah. And so like what does it mean to like some of the customers like you've seen in this space on in regard to this problem?
Yeah, so we see net in our kind of customer base, this is increasingly a problem. Overall, trend-wise, we're seeing 6 times increase in attack behaviors impacting Microsoft identities, basically from the first half to the second half of the year. And these are environments too, which have some of Microsoft's best capabilities enabled. E5, Microsoft's kind of premium security license, has really, really rich features. It's really good at prevention. These are the customers where we are still seeing attacks happen and still
Mhm.
being able to help them in finding the detection. But the problem with it being is, these are the customers that attackers want to target the most. And so there
Yeah.
ends up being still these problems here. Prevention is great, capabilities in Microsoft are great, but there's just gaps that present when an attacker has these objectives that they have.
Yes, right. And so basically we're saying that customers are not safe relying on native solutions, right? And so let's talk about why then.
I think, I like to, there's the magic three, but I like to keep it simple in some cases. I think there's two big things that are the problems right now. Um, in the native solution space, there's coverage gaps. Um, you need the right coverage to find what attackers are doing. And what we've seen is that ultimately you look at Microsoft's list of MITRE coverage, and they've got great MITRE coverage on paper. You can say you're doing really well, but ultimately you go a level deeper, you start running tests, and you find that some of those rules in the sim, some of those analytics, there can get bypassed by attackers. There's multiple ways to skin a cat type scenario. There's multiple ways for attackers to execute a technique. And we see that attackers are able to wiggle their way through moving past those rules, moving past even some of their analytical rules, and find ways to still execute their attacks undetected. The
Right.
other side of this is that when you do see alerts coming out of those native solutions, the clarity, the actionability of those alerts is questioned. We hear a lot. Ultimately, there's a lot of noise that coming in that Microsoft console. Lots of benign alerts. Benign alerts cost time, cost money for teams to operate and like tune. And then ultimately, if you're spending time on benign alerts, you're missing the real attack.
Yeah.
And part of it is there's unreliable scoring. It's as good as no scoring if you can't rely on the scoring. And the context that comes with those alerts, it's all static. It's just a listed a reason. And so you don't know, you don't have that human response of knowing where to go, what to do. And that causes slowness. It results in missed attacks, even when alerts do fire.
Yeah, that makes sense. And it aligns with like a recent customer conversation. It's a Microsoft E5 mature Microsoft house. And the customer basically said that he has 20 years of cybersecurity experience. That's why he can know which alert to look at in the Microsoft tool. But he admit that basically it is very hard for anyone new in cybersecurity to know which one to prioritize based on like native tools. So 100% the clarity is needed, and it's very hard, and it's so easy to miss an attack if there's no actionable insights with them.
Exactly.
Cool. So let's talk about then how does Vectra AI fill gaps then?
Yeah, so I mean, we're talking about these gaps, and our security research team, our folks here that work on the offensive side, they found them. They saw these gaps, they understood these gaps, and we had customers explaining them to us. So
Yeah.
we've got history here in solving these exact problems of keeping up with attackers, finding what they're doing, and ultimately detecting them before they do damage. And so the modern Vectra platform today, it extends across the entire Microsoft surface, from that network data center to packets in the cloud to IaaS, that kind of identity interacting with the Azure control plane, the SaaS identity itself, the SSO, your Azure ID, Entra ID identity. Vectra has a role to play across the board now. And you see AWS sitting there too, because multi-cloud is the modern way too. We can say it's a Microsoft, but this is a greater problem even than that. And our goal is to unify this, and we've been able to do this in a lot of customers now, to find these threat actors before damage is done, even when they're bypassing prevention, even when they're bypassing other technologies detection systems.
Right.
The core kind of way that we view what we've built is falls in three things. It's coverage to find threats, clarity to act quickly, and control to ultimately stop those threats. And so, the coverage is about us using AI. We're an AI company first. We've used AI to do our detections and find these techniques in robust ways. The great advantage of this is it's a lot harder to bypass that kind of AI that's flexible to a behavior than a sim rule that's listing out specific things that an attacker can go read and know how to bypass. You can't do that when you have AI running like we use. That
Mhm.
gives that MITRE coverage in a way that's different than what you get with other tools. It's not just I have the coverage for MITRE. We're going the level of making sure it's robust coverage to what attackers do, and applying that to the humans, non-humans, cloud, machines, everything that we can across that kind of infinity that is the attack landscape you just saw. Clarity, act quickly. It's about giving you ultimately less as an analyst to look at.
Mhm.
Not less threats that are relevant, but less of the stuff that is wasting your time. We've got a
Right.
lot going on behind the scenes there. AI is being used to drive only the urgent threats. We're linking together that story that you just saw on the last page.
Mhm.
That first story where you saw, an attacker going through, that gets linked together in a clear case object. You can see here, even in the example case here, with AI running in the background to remove the benign alerts. This is about giving clarity. On the control side, it's what we give the teams that are working in the system to action this. So it's flexibility and controls, ability to audit where they are in terms of their security operations to prevent some attacks, and then dig into the data to actually find answers to questions they have. Ultimately, it's about giving the tool that teams need to stop the threat before damage.
Right. Yeah. And the key is really to connect the dots, right? Because we hear from a lot of the customers that they really have the challenge to like paint the whole picture because they rely on siloed solutions for each of these different attack surfaces. So the clarity here is really about correlating that and giving them actionable insights so that they can stop the attack when it happens. So, yep. So with that, this is the wrap of this episode. And if you haven't checked out all the other podcast episodes, feel free to check it out on our YouTube channel. We're also on Spotify. And with that, thank you so much, John, for joining me today. And I hope to see you on the next one.
Great talking, Tiff. Bye.